next question is from Nad. What happens to children during rapture time? What age? And I assume that's with regards to age of accountability. And are they only kids from Christian families?
That's an awesome question. And it's a question I think that has confused so many people. But it's also a question that is really, it's wrought with danger. And that is the assumption that there is a specific or a particular age of accountability. Let's do the bad news first, okay? The bad news is that all have sinned and come short of the glory of God, that all are born in sin. We are born with a sin nature. We are not born with a spiritual nature. We are not born with the nature of God. We are born with the nature of the flesh. From the day of our birth, we are that way. And the gospel by parents needs to be shared with their children at the earliest of age that they can comprehend. That is an absolute must. Assuming that they are saved up until a particular point can be a really dangerous assumption and can actually stop people from sharing the gospel with their children at all. So that's the bad news. That's the bad biblical news, right? The reality is that we are born in sin. Now, there are definitely hints in the Bible that gives the impression that a child, up until a certain point, is going to be with the Lord in heaven. Okay, and the first place that we find that is really with David, King David. So when King David has Bathsheba's child, that firstborn child that was there, that was actually David's child, was one that was conceived in sin. That was David basically taking Bathsheba to himself, and then as a result of that ended up committing murder against the father and all that sort of thing. It was a horrific, and it set a domino effect within his life after that. So there were consequences to that sin. But after her husband Uriah the Hittite had died, David took Bathsheba to wife. God had said he will strike the child and kill the child. That the child that he's conceived, it will die. And there's an interesting passage, and it's found in 2 Samuel. Chapter 12. Now, this particular point, David is lamenting. He's set himself to prayer, and as he has set himself to prayer, the child dies. And it gives it. It's really interesting. Where will we take the text from? Have a look from verse 19. So 2 Samuel chapter 12 verse 19. But when David saw that his servants whispered, David perceived that the child was dead. Therefore David said unto his servants, Is the child dead? And they said, Yeah. They said, He is dead. Then David arose from the earth and washed and anointed himself and changed his apparel and came to the house of the Lord and worshipped. And he came to his own house, and when he required, they set bread before him, and he did eat. Then said his servants unto him, What thing is this that thou hast done? Thou didst fast and weep for the child while it was alive, but when the child was dead, thou didst rise and eat bread. In other words, he didn't mourn, he didn't grieve or anything like that during that time. And he said, While the child was yet alive, I fasted and wept. For I said, Who can tell whether God will be gracious to me that the child may live? But now he is dead. Wherefore should I fast? Makes sense. Can't fast for the child now that he's dead. Can't pray for the child now that he's dead. Can I bring him back again? I shall go to him, but he shall not return to me. And I know that that's not, it doesn't nail it shut. The child would have been, the belief is the child would have been around about 9 months old, roughly at this stage. But the child was struck, as the Lord had said, and the child had died. But the fascinating thing is, David making the claim, and David was a prophet, don't forget, in Scripture, and he makes a claim and he says, the child will not come back to me, but I shall go to him. Well, we know David is in heaven. We know that he's going to be back ruling and reigning with Christ. So for David to make the claim that he is going to be with the child in heaven, a child at 9 months of age has no ability to be able to perceive the gospel, know the gospel, believe the Lord. So there is a definite picture here that the child is in heaven with the Lord, and if it's this child, it can potentially be all. Okay. There's another passage also, however, in the book of Romans. Paul speaks about something. He says something very, very strange. And it's in Romans, let's have a look, what chapter? Romans 7. He speaks about the law here. He speaks about it first in, in the beginning of chapter 7 is brilliant. And then, but he speaks about it again here in verse 7. So let's start there. What shall we say then? Is the law sin? God forbid. Nay, I had not known sin but by the law. For I had not known lust except the law had said, thou shalt not covet. But sin, taking occasion by the commandment, wrought in me all manner of concupiscence. For without the law, sin was dead. Well, this gives you an understanding of the purpose of the law, first and foremost. The law is there to reveal sin within us. Without the law, we have no ability to recognize sin. Matter of fact, there is no sin without law, because you can't have a transgression of a law that doesn't exist. Okay? Does that make sense? Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's like a mirror for you to look at.
Basically, yeah. It's set up in a way that I compare my life and my actions to that mirror, and I can identify sin. Okay, I can identify that I've transgressed against those laws. And then he says this, something really interesting. He says, "For I was alive without the law once." Notice the words. I was alive without the law once. But when the commandment came, sin revived and I died.
So that's like when he came to an understanding of right and wrong. That's what I take from that.
Certainly gives you that impression, doesn't it? Because, there was not a time that Paul was alive without the law, and the law was since Moses. And so the law was since then. For him to say that I was alive without the law once gives you an impression that, and then he says, but when the law came, sin revived and I died. It wasn't that he began to sin. It was then the revelation of sin, the understanding of the transgression it was revived and I died. This is really interesting because it gives a logical precedent with respect to the laws within the land, the laws in the world. You have to be aware that there is a law before you can transgress that law. Okay? That's why the vital importance of a free society in a free country, we're getting into politics, in a free society, in a free country, there has to be laws that are few, clear and few. That way people can follow and obey those laws. But when you have many laws and they are vague, there is no logical there is no logic to conceive the idea that you can obey those laws, okay? Because number one, you're ignorant of them. You don't know that they're there to begin with, so therefore you shouldn't be charged with sinning against them.
And then if they're vague, it could be,
up for interpretation whether or not you've broken the law.
Exactly.
And that's the world that we've come into. We're coming into a world of almost like a totalitarian sort of a state where the laws are many and vague. So basically everybody, every single day of the week, is breaking the law in one form or another. And I've preached about this once before. But what we get here from Paul is a recognition that sin is only sin when the law shines its light on it, when it's a recognition of sin. And part of that is consciousness within us as well. Our conscience is revived. We have an awareness of that which is good and that which is evil.
Yeah, so there wouldn't be a specific age because it would all depend on the child's understanding of.
Yeah, and look, and from the smallest of age, parents are teaching their children right from wrong. Well, good parents are. Okay.
That just reminds me of a funny thing that I think it was Pastor Jack Hibbs said in one of his sermons. He said, children, because we're born into sin, children will naturally sin. And it's not like, you don't teach your children to sin. You don't say, hey kid, come here, get your notebook out, I'm going to teach you how to do the wrong thing. You know, they know that how to do that already. You've got to teach them to do the right thing.
That's exactly right.
So, yeah.
Okay. So there is certainly a point of an awareness within the child of their sinful state. Okay. And that awareness can be different for all children. I've known of and truly believe that there have been children that have been saved as young as 3 or 4 years of age. The youngest in my home was 8. I had my youngest daughter made a profession of faith when she was about 5 or 6, but it wasn't a genuine profession. I don't know why she made the profession, but it wasn't a genuine profession. And my job as a responsible father is to keep an eye on my children, to identify the Spirit of God in them. Has there been a change? Has there been a transformation? Don't tell me that you can be born again and there's not a change. I can't remember who the pastor was, and he said you can't be hit by a freight train and not be changed. And God is a little bit more than a freight train. There has to be a change. There has to be a transformation. It has to be evident. Jesus spoke about the fruit on the tree is as evident. You know, James spoke about the fountain that doesn't bring forth bitter and sweet water. You know, as evident. So we recognise there has to be an evident change. Setting aside backsliding for the time being, has to be a change. My daughter didn't have that change. There was no evident change within her. Matter of fact, she was more and more uncomfortable every time we did a Bible study with the children. And she just wouldn't sit under it. You know, I found it really uncomfortable. And I shared with her that she's not Christian. She's not saved. Well, that plagued her mind for the next couple of years, for the next year at least. And until finally she came to the Lord. And it was a delicate time for me too, because I didn't want her to make another false profession. So I had to really see the Spirit of God working in her. But I told her the entire time that, you know, all she needs to do is just seek after the Lord and pray and ask Him to save her, and He will save her. You know, but you know, graciously the Lord had, you know, blessed us to be able to bless me to be there at the time and share the gospel with her again. Point is, do not stop sharing the gospel with your children. At the earliest moments that they have the opportunity to hear the gospel, you share the gospel with them. My daughter coming back from a trip, this is the same daughter, coming back from a trip, we were in Warrnambool, Port Fairy. We were in a particular national park over there. She's in the back of the car. And she said that if the rapture happens, she would be left behind, you know. And there's my wife and my other 2 children trying to console her and say, oh, no, don't say that, Nat, don't say that, you know. And yet I sat there thinking, she's right. Now, she was 7. She's right. She has an understanding of the gospel. She knows the truth of the scriptures. So there was a conscious awareness already within her mind with respect to her state. And I said to them, you know, you can't say that she's wrong, guys. I mean, I know you want to make her feel better, but what she's saying is true, you know. So at that particular point in her life, yes, 100%, evidently true. She would be left behind. But praise the Lord, it wasn't long after that that she came to Christ. So, no, there is no specific age of accountability. People have used the age of 20. Why have they used the age of 20? Well, they use the age of 20 because they go back to the Old Testament and they see in the book of Numbers that only those who were above the age of 20 went forth to war. Okay, so they perceive within their own minds that that's the age of accountability. Some of them believe that it's 13. Well, where do they get that idea from? Well, because the Jews, by the age of 13,
bar mitzvah.
They have their bar mitzvah, you know.
Yeah.
So the reality is we don't know when it is. What about people who are struck with particular mental disabilities, people who are autistic, or people who are...
like my brother, who was brain damaged at birth.
Yeah. Okay. I have seen individuals who have Down syndrome, for example, who would be kleptomaniacs. They would literally steal stuff, you know. And I've seen them respond to the gospel, and they have believed an unbelievable transformation in their life. You know, the gospel can impact and can penetrate. It's not the mind that the gospel is spoken to, and this is the important thing to remember. The mind has been deceived by the heart. Jeremiah 17:9 says the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? Well, what can the heart deceive? In my mind, I can't deceive anything but the mind. I've spent a lot of years preaching to people's minds, trying to tell them of the logical consistency of the reality of God. And instead, what I found was people have had a mental mental arguments against it. Okay? But when I changed that and I actually preached the gospel to them, told them about the nature of the law, reminded them about sin and where they stand before a holy God, it's amazing how much I had their attention. The gospel speaks to the heart. That's fundamentally important. It'll go through the years, no doubt, but it'll speak to the heart. So share the gospel with your children. Now, so I can't sit there and tell you all children are saved. I believe that that is certainly the case, okay, with regards to up to I don't know what age. But there is another passage in the Bible that I got a tremendous amount of comfort in, and that's that incredible argument that Abraham had with God in the book of Genesis. And it was just before God had gone to destroy the Sodom and Gomorrah. I think it's Genesis 18. Genesis chapter 18. Remember this negotiation that that Abraham was having. The Lord had said that he's going to be destroying the city. Abraham said in verse 24, peradventure there be 50 righteous within the city. Will they also destroy and not spare the place for 50 righteous that are therein? That be far from thee to do after this manner, to slay the righteous with the wicked, and that the righteous should be as the wicked. That be far from thee. Shall not the judge of all the earth do right? In the end, that is the wonderful thing that we can rejoice in. There are certain things that we are not privy to in the scriptures with respect to specifics on children's ages or this or that or the other, and when they are saved. Yet do I believe that all the aborted babies on earth go to heaven. I personally do believe that. Can I prove it from scripture? No, I can't. Only through that passage in 2 Samuel can I bring something like that up as a perceivable thing. But what I can know with 100% certainty is that the judge of all the earth will do right. He will do what is right, and that's as far as I can go. You know, I'd love to believe that it's true for everybody up until the age of 5, and then after the age of 5, you better be sure you're sharing the gospel, because after that they're gonna, they can potentially fall into hell. They might be, they might be much older than that. 15, could be even 20 years of age, depending on their state of mind, depending on where they're at. What I do know is that the judge of all the earth will do right. I hope that goes a distance to answering the question, but I do want to encourage you. Please be sharing the gospel with your children. Don't let anything dissuade you from doing so. That's vitally important.
Okay, this next question actually arises from somebody who viewed the first video with regards to the Garden of Eden.
Right.